This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
UN envoy to Sudan discusses mediation options with ousted prime minister. More airstrikes reported in Ethiopia as rebels claim seizing key town. And all eyes on Glasgow, which is hosting the UN's climate change conference. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. Less than 10% of African countries to hit key COVID-19 vaccination target. And in sports, Kenya's Eliud Kipchoge participates in event to mark 1,000 days to Paris 2024. Once again, welcome to Africa Live. Great to have you along with me. Let's start in Sudan, where the UN Special Representative to the country has met with ousted Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok at his residence, where he remains under house arrest. Volker Perthes says he has discussed the options of mediation and the way forward for Sudan. Meanwhile, 3 protesters were reportedly killed and around 100 injured after tens of thousands rallied nationwide on Saturday. So far, 11 people have been killed since the protests began. People have been marching against the military since it seized power almost a week ago. Musab Mushin Ibrahim has more.
It was the day that everyone was waiting for. All thousands of people, 100,000 of people, they went to the street from many different parts in Khartoum, from the Umdurman, Bahri, and Khartoum. And it was a really enormous people. They went outside. There was the protest, and unfortunately there was the 3 killed in Umdurman and 100 injured. And there was the protest too from demonstrating from around the state, from 5 states in Sudan. They're asking for democracy and supporting the Vice President Abdullah Hamdok to get back. And still, the Abdullah Hamdok sticking his condition. The strict condition is like to release all the people in the prison, and the government should be handled by him, and the army should not be put hand anything about the politics. And he wants to choose the government minister by himself. So the life is very normal, but they still cut the electricity and the internet, and they cut the cell phone and the text message, and you cannot go out from the district. You just stay at your neighborhood. Even the ambulance cannot cross the bridge or go to the hospital. And the people in Sudan still state of council, and everything is locked down, the civil obedience, and there is no any press conference, there is no any declaration from the General Commander of Burhan until right now.
There have been reports of more airstrikes in northern Ethiopia as government intensifies a campaign of aerial bombardment against the Tigray People's Liberation Front. For more on this, we are joined by CGTN's Groom Chala and Addis Ababa. Groom, welcome to the program. Thank you for taking time to speak to us. Can you give us an update on the latest from the northern part of Ethiopia?
Richard, let's just begin from the airstrike you have just mentioned. The Ethiopian government has just announced that an airstrike in and around Mekelle city has been held today, and the target was Agula Training Center. According to the government, that area has been used by the rebel group for training and other purposes, and that has been the target. And the military said it has successfully hit the target. On the other hand, we know that war has continued in different parts of the Amhara regional state against government force. The TPLF force are saying that they are gaining some lands, and the government is also claiming that it is really getting triumph here and there. But we can confirm that war really has continued.
All right, Groom Chala, let's leave it there for now. Thank you for staying on top of that story for us. Moving along in other developing stories to Rome now, where leaders of the world's 20 major economies are meeting for a second day. Chinese President Xi Jinping addressed the summit via video link. He urged developed countries to fulfill their commitments to developing countries and provide funds to help them cope with climate change. He called for global efforts and concrete actions to address global challenges. He also called for the full implementation of the Paris Climate Deal, and he urged major economies to strengthen cooperation in balancing environmental protection and economic development, addressing climate change and safeguarding livelihoods. President Xi's speech has been welcomed by African countries, including Uganda. Ugandan Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Oryem Henry Okello, says he supports China, Russia, and India's significant contribution and participation at the G20 summit.
Without the participation of key players like China, like Russia, in these discussions has no meaning whatsoever. If the G20 is to be taken seriously, if the G20 is to have results on the issues of climate change, of universal security, of the issues of elimination of nuclear weapons, all these matters should have the key participants to be on the table, and to exclude countries like China, to exclude countries like Russia, and think that you can then be able to have a constructive resolution towards climate change, towards world order and world security, and the issue of prohibition of nuclear weapons, I think is a folly and is a failure from the beginning.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has met with U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken on the sidelines of the G20 summit. They say they covered a range of topics in a 50-minute meeting. It was their first face-to-face exchange since their talks in Alaska 7 months ago. Wang Yi is attending the summit in Rome on behalf of Chinese President Xi Jinping. Last year's G20 summit was held online because of the pandemic, but this year's event is in person. Voting in Japan's general elections has ended. Exit polls show the country's ruling Liberal Democratic Party will keep their majority in the lower house. Earlier, Phoebe Amorosa sent this report from Tokyo.
According to surveys as of 6 p.m., it seemed that 31.64% of people had voted, and that's up 1.65 percentage points compared to last time round. And this is significant because the higher the turnout, the more votes that the oppositions are likely to win. Now, exit polls are just coming in at the moment, and there seems to be some fairly dramatic developments. Yes, the LDP and its coalition partner Komeito are projected to keep their majority, but there is a big question mark over whether the LDP can keep its single party majority. Media is projecting that it will get 212 to 253 seats, and that is way below the 276 it currently holds, and it's not certain whether it will be able to keep that 233. Now, that is really the key point of this election, that for the LDP, it was kind of established that with the Komeito's help that they would stay in power, but if they lose that majority, this is going to be a major blow to Prime Minister Kishida, who is hoping for a strong mandate to lead. This could end up resulting in political instability, and it risks Prime Minister Kishida becoming one of Japan's revolving door prime ministers in and out of office within a year.
And a lot more coming your way on Africa Live, including All Eyes on Glasgow, which is hosting the UN's Climate Change Conference. And less than 10% of African countries to hit key COVID-19 vaccination target. Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for sticking with us. The 26th United Nations Conference on Climate Change starts today in Glasgow, Scotland. The president of the summit has called on countries to work together to solve the crisis, saying it's our last hope to keep global warming from spiraling out of control. The gathering is seen as a crucial opportunity to reaching new consensus on reversing the growth of carbon emissions. Now, in South Africa, the city of Cape Town has begun to prepare itself for the adverse climatic conditions that climate change is expected to bring in the future. The city has implemented policy changes as well as built infrastructure to deal with challenges such as rising sea levels. Some people, however, believe climate change is already beginning to take hold on their lives and livelihoods. CGTN's Travis Andrews has more.
As a city located on the southern tip of Africa, Cape Town is often exposed to the stormy Atlantic Ocean, and this is usually the result. A broken road lies as evidence of storm surges that are increasing in frequency, and this phenomenon is only set to get worse as climate change takes hold. The city of Cape Town, though, has begun adapting to this change by implementing new policies that govern coastal development and has also invested in protective infrastructure.
We've got a range of adaptation interventions that have been completed, as well as others that are in progress. These interventions span across socio-institutional interventions, as well as the more traditional hard engineering approaches, which might include seawalls and revetments, etc.
Those interventions also include the restoration of coastal ecosystems, which play a key role in mitigating the impact of climate change-induced coastal pressures. However, researchers have found the mean rising sea level for Cape Town is 2 millimeters per year on average, which is increasing extreme tidal activity that has begun to affect some people. For many local fishermen, rising sea levels brought along by climate change presents a real danger that threatens access to key fish stocks that is a key source of income for many coastal communities.
I'm very concerned about the sea levels that is rising, because we as small-scale fishermen, we catch from the seashore like you see here now. We throw in our nets, waiting for the fish to come to the shore for us so we can catch it. But for the recent few years, we don't see that. Things are changing. Fish don't come or they come late.
If we catch fish, it's very small, or it's very few. And the species we are getting is not the ones we always used to get. So that make our job very difficult.
And the empty nets are further proof that some communities believe they've already been adversely affected by climate change and rising sea levels. Ravzanu, CGTN, Cape Town.
Most African countries will not hit the year-end target of fully vaccinating 40% of their people unless efforts to accelerate the pace of inoculations succeed. The World Health Organization says only 5 countries are projected to achieve this mark, with the continent struggling to meet rising demand for essential vaccination commodities like syringes. CGTN's Enoch Sokolia reports.
According to WHO Africa, only 3 countries have fully vaccinated over 40% of their population. It means only Seychelles, Mauritius and Morocco have met the goal set in May by the World Health Assembly, the world's highest health policy setting body. The UN agency says that at the current pace, just 2 more countries, Tunisia and Cape Verde, will also hit the target. Indeed, the continent is struggling. Only 77 million people have been fully vaccinated, which is just 6% of the continent's population. In comparison, over 70% of the high-income countries have already vaccinated more than 40% of their people. But why are many African countries struggling? WHO points to several issues. The organization says countries still need to improve their readiness for COVID-19 vaccine rollout. It says 42% of countries in Africa have not yet completed district-level plans for their campaigns, while nearly 40% have not yet undertaken intra-action reviews, which are key to refining and improving their vaccination campaigns. But lack of access to vaccines is still a major problem. At the current pace, Africa still faces a 275 million shortfall of COVID-19 vaccines against the year-end target of fully vaccinating 40% of its people. WHO Africa says the COVAX facility is working to address this threat by securing deals with syringe manufacturers and through better planning to avoid deliveries outpacing the supply of syringes. Nearly 8.5 million COVID-19 cases and more than 217,000 deaths have been recorded in Africa. Enoch Sikolia, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Learning disabilities can present a complex teaching scenario for educators. Unlike many physical disabilities, learning disabilities are not immediately apparent. Kuka Njeru, a Kenyan mother of two, has decided to homeschool her dyslexic son after she realized he was having difficulty catching up in school. She is also launching an online platform where she hopes to share her knowledge with teachers and parents on inclusive learning. Here is her story.
I started homeschooling my children because when my child was in pre-unit, he did an open exam. When he answered the first, he got 4 out of 60 in one and 6 out of 40 in the other. And so we lived near a club on Thika Road then, and it had this reggae song, Martin Luther Block. So he wrote Block, B-L-O-C-K-E, on every other gap. Then when he got to a picture, he wrote the proper name of the picture in the right spelling. So by the time he was doing his end of third term exam and I was working in a regular job, I discovered, my goodness, this boy can't even read, and he's supposed to go to a very competitive grade 1. Now let me tell you what happens to a dyslexic child. We read a letter at a time. And so this boy will probably copy. If you're writing banana, he'll write B and look and write B, then he'll look up and like A. And because of the concentration issues, he'll probably forget he was writing banana and forgets and doesn't do the work as fast. So he was really beaten up by the teacher. Teachers don't know about learning disabilities. That's when I taught him how to read, because I understood what he was going through. And we used pictures, I read stories to him, and every time he will hear the stories, he'll be familiar with the stories and will learn the words. I've learned that dyslexics and children with learning disabilities are brilliant, brilliant children. And if exposed to the right method of learning, will wind up being very, very successful. So if you saw my dad and you saw my twin sister, you would see we look like triplets because of how we walk, how we talk, we express ourselves greatly. And of course, at the end of the day, we are so tired. We don't want to see people because the human interaction was too much. And those are symptoms of ADHD. If you see my son again, it's so evident. He has attention deficit hyperactive disorder and he has dyslexia. So it's passed on genetically. But what I would probably want to tell parents is it's not a death sentence. I did a study in learning disabilities when I was doing my master's. So we have a timetable, start with Bible.
As I wondered about in the East.
Bible verses, song, a story, and then we probably start the subject that's top on that day. I'm mixing up some content that I'm creating and some content that I find free online. So I'll give them what their lesson is. It's either a worksheet, a video. We use blocks, we use rough surfaces, we use soft surfaces, we use pebbles. We just use practical things. But my favorite way of teaching is experiential. So we have like 3 lessons, take a break for 30 minutes, just like regular school, have another couple of lessons, do lunch, then we do 1 lesson after lunch, which is probably art or music, something that's fun, and I let them be. And one of the biggest worries about children with, who learn from home is how they'll be socialized. My kids have many friends. And there's a lot of empathy that goes to diseases that you can see physically. Like, look at me, I have ADHD, where is it written? And so if the teachers can learn empathy, but also if they can be equipped with the different teaching styles and equipped with the different teaching material. I'm launching Learning Differently this October. We want to train teachers at a larger scale because we believe if we train teachers about the different learning disabilities, they'll be able to have a greater impact.
And we are not done just yet. We've got your sports news coming up after the break. Stick around. Here's what's ahead. In sports, Kenya's Eliud Kipchoge participates in event to mark 1,000 days to Paris 2024.